Okay, so let's be honest. Trying to keep up with everything that's going on in tech these days,
Yeah.
it's almost impossible.
Right.
There's just so much information flying around.
Yeah, it feels like you're constantly drinking from a fire hose.
A fire hose, exactly. So that's where we come in.
Right.
With this deep dive, we're going to give you like the distilled essence of a really crucial topic.
Yeah, cut through all the noise and get to what matters.
Exactly. And today we're going to be plunging into LangChain. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, it's been everywhere lately.
It's everywhere. It's become this huge talking point, especially if you're working with large language models at all.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, think about it. Have you ever tried to get an LLM to do
Something really specific.
something really specific, and it just feels way more complicated than it should be?
Oh, absolutely. Like you just wanted to do this one simple thing,
Yeah.
but you need to jump through all these hoops.
All these hoops.
The-
So frustrating.
It is. And
Yeah.
and what about those chatbots that seem to completely forget what you just told them?
Oh my gosh, yes. Like having a conversation with a goldfish.
Totally robotic goldfish.
Yeah. So those are exactly the kind of headaches that LangChain is designed to fix.
It's like it's stepping in to say, we get it, we've been there, and here's a better way.
Right. And to help us really unpack this, we're tapping into this fascinating online discussion I saw
Oh, yeah?
between Abinash Mishra and Rahul Singh.
Oh, they're both great.
They're both, really leading thinkers in AI solutions.
Yeah, really practical insights.
Exactly. So we've basically taken their conversation and pulled out the absolute key takeaways for you.
Nice.
Our mission today is pretty straightforward.
Let's hear it.
We really want to understand what LangChain is at its core.
Right back to basics.
Back to basics. Why is it suddenly so popular?
Like, why is everyone talking about it now?
Yeah, what are the core components that make it tick?
The nuts and bolts.
And how's it actually being used in the real world?
Right, because we see all these headlines, but what's the reality?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at the successes and also some of the hiccups along the way.
Yeah, gotta learn from the mistakes, too.
Exactly. And also, what are its limitations? What are the things that it just, can't do or...
And what are the trade-offs? Like, everything has a cost, right?
Yeah. And the things you should think about before you even consider using it.
Right, should I even go down this path?
Questions! Exactly. So if you've been hearing all this buzz about LangChain and you're just
Okay, someone make sense of this for me.
yes, cut through the hype. You've come to the right place.
This is LangChain Decoded.
All right, so let's jump right into the heart of it. The big question that I think is probably on everyone's mind.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah. Why is LangChain such a big deal right now? What is the fundamental problem that it's trying to solve?
Well, if you take a step back and look at the big picture, right, the real power of these large language models, it comes when you integrate them into actual applications.
Real world stuff.
Real world stuff, exactly. But as Rahul was pointing out in this discussion, trying to do that from scratch,
Oh, yeah.
it can be a nightmare. It can turn into this tangled mess of code and complexity really quickly.
Right. I mean, I can imagine even
Yeah.
just a simple interaction with a chatbot.
Yeah.
Think about all the steps involved behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to take what the person types in. You got to figure out how to turn that into a prompt that the LLM understands.
Right, and then you have to send that prompt off to the API, wait for the response, hope there's no error.
Hope there's no error. Yeah.
And then you have to try and remember what was said before so the conversation actually makes sense.
Yeah, it's, like you said, a tangled mess just for something that should feel
Straightforward.
so simple.
Yeah. And that's where LangChain comes in. It's like a magic wand that waves away a lot of that complexity.
So it's handling all that stuff under the hood.
Exactly. It gives you all these pre-built components, these building blocks that take care of those common tasks. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time you want to create something with an LLM.
It's like having a toolbox full of ready-made AI parts.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And actually, Rahul used a similar one. He compared it to Lego blocks for AI.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So you have these reusable pieces that you can snap together to build more and more intricate AI-powered tools without having to start from scratch every time.
So it's like modular AI building.
Exactly. And if you think about the whole flow of information, from that initial request to the final response, Rahul talked about how LangChain helps you manage that entire pipeline.
Orchestrating it.
Yeah, he actually used the analogy of a conductor leading an orchestra.
I like that.
Yeah, bringing all these different AI elements together in harmony.
It's not just about simplifying the individual calls to the LLM, but managing that whole...
The whole flow.
The whole conversation.
Yeah, and that has some pretty big advantages for everyone involved.
Yeah.
I mean, for developers, it means they can iterate much faster.
because they're not getting bogged down in the weeds.
Exactly. They don't have to spend all their time on the low-level details of like prompt formatting and error handling.
Right.
And from a leadership perspective, this can actually lead to less technical debt.
Technical debt.
Yeah, that's that kind of hidden cost of complex code that can really slow you down in the future.
Oh, I see. So LangChain can help prevent that by keeping things more organized and streamlined from the start.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that can lead to better strategic outcomes overall because teams can focus on the big picture goals.
So for our listeners, what this means is that if you're building AI applications yourself, LangChain can make your life a lot easier and more efficient.
Yeah,
And even if you're not a developer, just understanding how LLMs are being integrated into the tech that you use every day.
that's powerful.
LangChain gives you a framework for understanding that.
It demystifies the process.
All right. So we've established that it really streamlines this whole process of getting LLMs to actually do stuff.
To do something useful in the world.
Exactly. Now let's get into the core of it.
Yeah.
What are the key components that actually make up a LangChain?
Okay, so Rahul outlined 5 main building blocks: models, chains, memory, agents and tools, and then vector stores, which are often used with something called RAG.
Okay, let's break those down one by one.
Sounds good.
So first up, models. That one seems pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, on the surface it is.
Yeah.
But what's really cool here is how LangChain acts as this kind of universal interface.
A universal interface.
Yeah, for interacting with all these different large language models.
So it's not tied to just one specific LLM?
Exactly. Rahul actually called it a universal remote for LLMs.
I love that.
It's a great way to think about it. So whether you're working with like OpenAI's GPT models or Anthropic's Claude, or even the huge variety of models available on Hugging Face,
I can handle all of them.
yeah, LangChain provides a consistent way to communicate with all of them.
Oh, that's so valuable.
Yeah, this abstraction is incredibly valuable because it means you're not locked into a single provider.
Right.
You can easily experiment with different models to see what works best for your particular needs and budget,
That flexibility is crucial.
especially in this field that's evolving so rapidly.
Okay, so models is all about providing that flexible connection to the LLMs themselves. Now, what about chains? That sounds like where the actual like step-by-step logic comes in.
You got it. The chains are like the pipelines or the automated workflows that you build for your AI tasks.
So it's like defining the sequence of actions.
Exactly. They define the sequence of actions that process information from the initial request that you give it all the way to the final response that you receive.
So there could be multiple steps involved in a single chain.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you might need to format the input in a certain way,
Yeah.
then send it off to a language model, parse the output, and then maybe even make calls to other tools or services along the way.
So it's not just a straight line from A to B.
No,
Yeah.
it can get pretty complex.
And how do you actually define these chains? Like what's the language or the syntax?
So traditionally, a lot of this has been done using Python code, which is a very popular programming language.
Okay.
But Rahul mentioned that there's a growing trend towards using something called LCEL.
LCEL, what is that?
Yeah, it stands for LangChain Expression Language.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically a more specialized syntax that's specifically designed for defining these complex AI workflows.
So it's like a language built just for LangChain.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And it's particularly useful when you're dealing with asynchronous operations.
Asynchronous.
Yeah. That means tasks that don't necessarily happen instantly. So things might be running in parallel or there might be delays.
So it helps manage that complexity.
Exactly. It makes defining these workflows much cleaner and easier to manage, especially as they get more and more intricate.
Right. So chains are all about bringing order to what could potentially be this like chaotic mix of different AI components and steps.
It's like giving your AI a clear roadmap to follow.
Now, the next one is memory. And I think this is a really big one, especially when we're talking about things like chatbots. Because
Yeah, you don't want your chatbot to have...
nobody wants to talk to a chatbot that has the memory of a goldfish.
Exactly. Like, hi, nice to meet you. Hi, nice to meet you. Every single time.
Every time you interact with it. So how does LangChain handle that?
So memory in LangChain is specifically designed to address that problem.
Okay, good.
It provides these mechanisms to store and retrieve information from past turns in a conversation.
So it can remember what you said before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it can use that information to make the conversation flow more naturally.
That's huge.
It is. It's a game changer for building those more human-like and engaging AI experiences.
So what are some of the ways that it actually does that? Like, how does it store this memory?
So there are different modules that you can use. One example is something called buffer memory, which basically keeps a running buffer of the most recent interactions.
Oh, so it's like a short-term memory.
Exactly. And then you have things like chat message history, which specifically keeps track of like the messages that have been exchanged in a chat.
So it knows the whole conversation history.
Yeah, and this allows the chatbot to refer back to things that were said earlier.
And it can actually use that to inform its responses.
Exactly. So instead of just giving you those generic canned responses, it can actually tailor its answers to the specific context of your conversation.
That's awesome. So it's like directly addressing that frustration that we've all felt with those robotic, forgetful chatbots.
Totally. And making the interaction feel much more natural and human-like for the person on the other end.
For our listeners out there.
So our listeners.
Yeah, when you're interacting with these things.
It's the difference between feeling like you're talking to a machine and feeling like you're having a genuine conversation.
Now, the next building block is agents and tools. And this one sounds really interesting to me because it's like it's giving the AI some real decision-making power.
Yeah. It's like taking things to the next level.
So how does that work?
So with agents, the idea is to move beyond just following a predefined set of steps in a chain.
Right. So it's not just blindly executing a script.
Exactly. Agents are designed to be more intelligent and adaptable. They can actually assess the current situation.
Like the state of the conversation.
Exactly. And then decide which tools they need to use to accomplish a specific task.
And what are these tools?
So a tool could be anything. It could be like a web search API.
Okay.
It could be a calculator. It could even be another specialized language model.
Oh, wow. So it's like giving the AI access to a whole suite of different capabilities.
Exactly. And the agent gets to decide which one to use at any given moment.
That's powerful.
It is. It's like having this intelligent project manager inside your AI system.
I like that analogy.
Yeah. So it can make those real-time decisions based on the information that it has.
So it's not just limited to spitting out canned responses.
Not at all. This opens up a whole world of possibilities for building much more complex and nuanced interactions.
And as you said before, it can lead to those aha moments.
Exactly. When you see the AI actually reasoning and taking action in a way that's genuinely helpful.
Like it's understanding what you need and figuring out the best way to get it done.
Exactly. It's a glimpse into the future of AI.
And then finally, we have vector stores and RAG. Now, this one sounds a bit more under the hood, a bit more technical.
Yeah, it does. But the concept is actually really powerful. Yeah. And it's becoming increasingly important in the world of AI.
Okay, so let's break it down. What is RAG?
So RAG stands for Retrieval-Augmented Generation.
Retrieval-Augmented Generation.
And it's essentially a way to supercharge your AI's knowledge by giving it access to external data.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So imagine you want your AI to answer a very specific question based on like your company's internal documents.
Okay.
Without RAG, the language model would only have its own general knowledge to draw on.
Which might not be enough.
Exactly. It might be outdated, inaccurate, or just not contain the specific information that you're looking for.
So ARI solves that problem.
Yes, RAG comes in and says, hold on, we have this treasure trove of information, let's use it. It basically adds a step before the language model is even called. It says, let's first find the most relevant information for this specific question, and then we'll give it to the language model so it can give the best possible answer.
So it's like doing research before answering the question.
Exactly, like giving your AI a research assistant.
And how does it find that relevant information?
That's where vector stores come in.
Oh, okay.
So these are specialized databases that are designed to store information, like documents, in a way that makes it really efficient to do semantic search.
Semantic search?
Yeah. It means searching based on the meaning of the words, not just the exact keywords.
Oh, I see. So it's understanding the context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you ask your AI a question, the system first uses the vector store to quickly find the most relevant documents.
So it's like an AI-powered internal Google search for your own data.
Yeah, Rahul used that exact analogy. It's a perfect way to think about it.
It finds those documents and then what?
Then it feeds that specific information to the language model, along with your original question.
So the LLM is getting this extra context.
Exactly. It's getting all the relevant background information it needs to give you a much more accurate and helpful answer.
So it's not just relying on its own general knowledge, but it can actually look up specific things in your company's digital filing cabinet.
Yeah. And that's incredibly powerful for dealing with questions that require that kind of specialized or proprietary information.
So Aragi is all about making those AI responses much more grounded and reliable.
Exactly.
And to manage all this complexity, you also mentioned LangSmith.
Ah, yes, LangSmith. This is LangChain's observability and debugging platform.
Observability and debugging.
Yeah. It's basically a set of tools that help you monitor and manage your LangChain applications.
Okay. Why is that important?
Well, When you're just experimenting with these chains and agents in like a development environment,
Right.
it's one thing. But when you actually deploy them into real-world applications that people are relying on, things get real. And you need to make sure that everything is working smoothly.
So LangSmith gives you visibility into what's happening under the hood.
Exactly. You can track the flow of data through your LangChain components, identify any bottlenecks or errors that might be occurring.
So it's like having a dashboard for your AI system.
Yeah. And
Right.
you could use it to test different configurations and really optimize the performance of your AI applications over time.
That's essential.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential for making sure that your AI is reliable, effective, and maintainable in the long run.
So it's like the difference between flying blind and having a clear view of what's going on.
It's like having those instruments in the cockpit of your AI plane.
Okay, so we've covered the what's of LangChain. Now let's get into the so what. Where is this actually making a difference in the real world?
Rahul shared some really interesting examples from his own experience.
Yeah, he did. He talked about both the successes and the failures, which is so valuable.
So let's start with a win. What was one of the success stories that he highlighted? One that really stood out was a case with a fintech startup.
Fintech startup, yeah.
They were facing a classic problem: slow response times
Yeah.
from their customer support team.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there, waiting on hold forever.
Exactly. It's a
Right.
major pain point for customers.
And for the business.
Right. It can really damage your reputation and your bottom line.
So how did LangChain come into the picture?
So they realized that a lot of the customer queries were actually pretty straightforward.
Like things that could be automated.
Exactly.
Oh.
Things that could be answered with the right information.
Mhm.
So they built this system using LangChain and Pinecone, which is a type of vector database.
Okay.
And they use RBRAG, which we talked about earlier.
Right. So they were able to pull in relevant information from their knowledge base.
Exactly. And provide instant answers to customer questions.
And that had a huge impact on their response times, right?
Yeah, a huge impact.
Yeah.
Rahul said they were able to reduce their ticket resolution times by 40%.
Wow, 40%. That's incredible.
It is. It's a massive improvement.
So that's a concrete example of LangChain delivering real business value.
It is. It's one of those aha moments that shows how this technology can actually improve things in the real world.
Happier customers, smoother operations.
Win-win.
But as with any powerful tool, there can be pitfalls. And Rahul also shared a cautionary tale.
Yeah, a reminder that even with something as helpful as LangChain, you still need to be careful.
What happened in this case?
So another team was really excited about using LangChain agents to handle customer interactions,
Okay.
which, as we discussed, can be incredibly powerful because of their ability to make decisions.
Right.
But they kind of jumped in headfirst without putting in place the right safeguards.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Specifically, they didn't really think about throttling.
Throttling.
Yeah, which is basically limiting the number of requests that the agents can handle at once.
Okay. So why is that important?
Well, if you don't have any throttling in place and the agents suddenly get flooded with requests, they can get overwhelmed.
Right, like a traffic jam.
Exactly. And that can lead to all sorts of problems. The agents might get stuck in these endless loops or start producing responses that just don't make any sense.
Oh, so it's like a customer service nightmare.
Yeah. It can really backfire if you're not careful.
So what's the key takeaway from that less successful experience?
I think the big lesson here is to start simple and scale gradually.
Don't try to do too much too soon.
Exactly. Begin with simpler implementations to really build a solid foundation of understanding.
Right.
And make sure you're actively using those monitoring tools like LangSmith to keep an eye on how your systems are performing in the real world.
So don't just set it and forget it.
No, you need to be vigilant and make adjustments as needed.
So it's a balance between embracing the power of these tools and also respecting the complexity that they introduce.
Absolutely. It's about being thoughtful and intentional in your approach.
All right, now shifting to a broader perspective, let's say someone in a leadership role is considering adopting LangChain within their organization. What are some of the strategic considerations that they should be thinking about?
Okay, so from an engineering leadership perspective, there are a few key things to keep in mind.
All right, let's hear them.
Firstly, LangChain is fantastic for rapid prototyping, and its flexibility is great.
Right, it can integrate with all these different LLMs.
Exactly. But leaders need to be aware that API costs can start to add up really quickly as usage grows.
Yeah, those API calls can get expensive.
So keeping a close eye on the budget implications is crucial.
Definitely don't want any surprises there.
No. And secondly, security and privacy are absolutely paramount.
Of course.
LangChain provides some basic tools for handling sensitive data, like masking personally identifiable information,
Okay.
but it's not a comprehensive security solution on its own.
So organizations need to have their own robust security protocols in place.
Absolutely, to protect user data throughout their entire AI applications.
Essential.
And then finally, it's important to remember that LangChain is just one tool in a growing ecosystem.
Right. It's not the only game in town.
There are alternatives like LangIndex, semantic kernel, and even the option of building custom solutions if that's what's needed.
So leaders shouldn't just jump on the LangChain bandwagon without considering the other options.
Exactly. They should do a thorough evaluation of their specific needs and use cases and make an informed decision about what's the best fit,
It's about finding the right tool for the job.
not just following the hype.
Excellent advice. So it's a holistic assessment of the pros and cons in the context of their specific organizational needs.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of cons, what are some of the limitations or things that individuals and teams should be aware of before they dive headfirst into LangChain?
Okay, so while LangChain does simplify a lot of things, it's important to be realistic about the learning curve.
Right. It's not a magic bullet.
No. You still need to have a good understanding of how these large language models work and the principles of effective prompt engineering.
So there's still a need for foundational knowledge.
Absolutely. And as we saw in that cautionary tale, poorly designed or managed chains and agents can introduce performance overhead.
Slow things down.
Exactly. So you need to be really diligent about monitoring your applications using tools like LangSmith.
Okay.
And then finally, the reliance on external language model APIs does create a degree of vendor lock-in.
Right. You're dependent on those third-party providers.
Yeah. So it's worth thinking about having backup plans or exploring alternative API providers just to mitigate that risk.
So it's about being aware of the potential dependencies and having a plan B.
Exactly.
All right, so it's not a completely plug-and-play solution. It still requires some understanding and careful management.
It's a powerful tool,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs to be used responsibly.
Okay, so Rahul and Abinash covered a lot of ground in their discussion. Let's do a quick recap of the key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay. So in a nutshell, LangChain is this powerful framework that makes it much easier to develop applications powered by large language models.
By providing this set of modular and reusable components.
Exactly. And its core features include this seamless integration with various LLMs, which is the models part.
Oh.
You have the structured automated workflows, which are the chains,
Right.
the ability to maintain conversational history, which is the memory aspect,
Essential for chatbots.
intelligent decision-making capabilities
Oh.
through agents and tools,
Right.
the ability to enhance your responses with external data using RA and vector stores.
Which is like giving your AI access to a whole library of information.
And then you have LangSmith, which is that crucial platform for monitoring and optimization.
So it's a comprehensive toolkit for building and managing LLM applications.
It is. And we've seen how it's being used in real-world scenarios to improve things like customer support and other business processes.
So it's not just theoretical, it's having a tangible impact.
Yeah, but it's important to be aware of those potential complexities that can arise with more intricate implementations.
Right. And the need to manage those API costs.
And the importance of prioritizing security.
And of course, remembering that LangChain is not the only option out there.
So it's about making informed decisions based on your specific needs.
Well said. Now, Rahul had a specific challenge for our listeners, didn't he?
He did. He really encouraged everyone to get hands-on experience with LangChain.
I love that, putting theory into practice.
Exactly. He challenged everyone to try building a simple application using LangChain this week.
That's a great way to really understand its capabilities.
Yeah, and he also encouraged people to share their experiences online
Oh, yeah.
using a hashtag.
Yeah? He suggested using the hashtag LangChain struggles
LangChain struggles.
to share both their successes and their struggles.
Because we all learn from each other's experiences.
Exactly. And it helps build a sense of community around this technology.
That's awesome. Now, before we wrap up, do you have a final thought-provoking idea for our listeners? Something to really consider as they continue exploring LangChain?
Well, I think it's really interesting to think about how LangChain's ability to orchestrate these complex AI workflows opens up possibilities beyond just those practical applications.
Right.
So for our next deep dive, we're actually planning to explore a more unconventional use case. Oh, I like where this is going.
Yeah. We're going to look at how you can use LangChain in more creative ways, maybe even hacking it, to create a meme-generating AI.
Now that sounds fun.
It'll involve getting into the nitty-gritty of prompt engineering,
I bet.
but it really highlights how flexible and adaptable these tools can be.
Taking it beyond those purely functional applications into the realm of creativity.
Exactly. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
Well, that definitely has my attention. I can't wait to hear more about that in our next episode.
Me too.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. This deep dive into LangChain has been incredibly insightful.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our audience, thank you for joining us. We hope you now have a much clearer understanding of what LangChain is and why it matters.
And we hope you'll join us for our next deep dive into the world of meme-generating AI.
Until then, keep exploring the fascinating world of AI.